school. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will lead tributes to David Amos, a conservative lawmaker who was stabbed to death late last week as he met with constituents at a local church. The attack shocked Britain, and it has fueled concern about politicians' safety. A 25-year-old British man is being held under the Terrorism Act on suspicion of murder. Officials say fire crews made significant progress against a wildfire that's been burning for nearly a week in Southern California coastal mountains. More than 1,600 firefighters battling the blaze in the mountains west of Santa Barbara were able to stop its forward growth. Federal officials said that blaze was 78% contained as of yesterday. Dow futures pointing lower this morning, down 108 points. More details at townhall.com.
Tell me why.
When you're hungry for tender brisket or some delicious homemade cobbler, then look no further than Leach Brothers Barbecue, located at 1106 East Henderson, Cleburne, Texas. Leach Brothers has been family-owned and operated since 1950. Take it from me, Taco Joe Orwinski. Todd and his family have been filling my belly breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a long time. Heck, I even have my own booth, open Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Come see them for dine-in, carry-out, and all your catering needs.
Accelerated Graphics and Signs, 101 East Renfro, Sweet C in Burleson, Texas, can handle all of your graphic needs. Need a banner or promotional products for your business? They got you covered. T-shirts and caps for your group. All you need to figure out is if you want them screen printed or embroidered. How about some slick graphics on that hot ride to make you stand out from the crowd? Accelerated Graphics and Signs can handle anything you throw at them. Located at 101 East Renfro Street, Sweet C in Burleson, Texas, go in and see them. Call them at 817-991-0523 or reach them on the web at www.acceleratedgraphics.net. They are loud and proud and want to serve you. Accelerated Graphics.
Hey, there's something you forgot to do. It sure is hot. Are you sweating like a dog? Wait, what? Dogs don't sweat. Oh no, you forgot to get your window tinted. Whether it's the kitchen window that sits in the sun for the hottest part of the day, or you just got new wheels, call Sharp Window Tinting in Burleson. 817-615-9379 or look them up on the web, sharpwindowtint.com.
Second.
The voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio. Welcome to the Her Show, Home Experience Radio, with your host, Trina Titus Lozano. This is a live call-in show that takes your calls and questions about marriage, family, and personal relationships. She's a licensed and ordained pastoral counselor, author, international conference speaker, wife, mom, and grandmother. She's been counseling and teaching vital relationship skills for over 30 years. Trina is real and relational and reveals strong truths spoken in tough love and common sense. Join us on the studio line now at 817-637-2585. And now, here's Trina.
Hello and welcome to the Her Show. I am Trina Titus Lozano, pastoral counselor, licensed and ordained Christian minister, and the host of the Her Show every Monday here on Joco Community Radio in Burleson, Texas. And today's topic is domestic violence, because October, among other things, is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This is a national recognized month to really pay attention to domestic violence, setting aside some time for awareness. And today's show is all about raising awareness for domestic violence. You may be an abuser. You may be the one who is the victim, or you may know somebody who is, but this affects all of us. It does, and it will if it hasn't yet. I promise you, there is so much domestic violence that occurs in America today that we really do need to be aware of how often it occurs, what to do about it, who it's affecting, and most importantly, how we can help. It is an assault on women's worth. Domestic violence is devastating, and abusive acts are committed both by men and women, but approximately 95% of domestic violence victims are women. And many of these women actually blame themselves for the abuse. And then that even further fuels the cycle of violence. And domestic violence, it is a pattern. And so we need to recognize what it is, and we need to do something about it. This is the heart of God. This is my heart. I love to be an advocate for victims. And I promise, if you are in an abusive relationship, you are worth more than that. You are worth a healthy relationship. Please contact me or call into the studio line today, 817-637-2585. I am happy to help. I'm here to help. Or you can contact me privately through a direct message, and I will get back to you. Again, the number here in the studio is 817-637-2585. Okay, domestic violence. Your partner apologizes, says the hurtful behavior won't happen again, but you fear it will. And at times you wonder whether you are imagining the abuse, yet the emotional and physical pain that you feel is real. If this sounds familiar, you might be experiencing domestic violence. I'm not alone in my studio today. I have a client with me that is actually going to remain anonymous. So I'm not going to introduce you to her name specifically, but she's going to help us. And even though her case is still pending, we want to together raise awareness. And I will also have a caller in the next hour that is a survivor. On the other side of it, her cases are closed and her life has recovered from the domestic violence, which was very severe. And so she will be on the phone this next hour sharing her story. So stay with me and let's talk about domestic violence. So welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much.
And I'm so glad you're here with us. And we want to help. We want to help. And I know that you know resources and you have people that have helped you. So right off the bat, share a couple of the resources that have been such a help to you. I know you're constantly forwarding me Instagram things, and you are just sending me messages of encouraging words and things that are helping you because you are right now in the middle of the process. And so during this process, there's nothing more important than having a support system around you. What do you find are your greater support?
Well, I find one of the biggest supports has been strongerco.org, and they run support groups for women who are in these situations, for women who are trying to figure out, am I indeed in an abusive relationship? How do I heal from this relationship? How do I go through all of these steps to get out? And they're just really there to walk alongside and to support people that are in this position. So that's definitely been a big one. Another one is btr.org, and that stands for Betrayal Trauma Recovery. And that's been so impactful for me. Another one would be calledtopeace.org, and they just really are there to help women in the same situation. Another one would be Flying Free Sisterhood, and also Sarah McDougall's page on either Facebook or Instagram. She's just a fantastic resource.
And get your pen ready. We will repeat these resources periodically throughout the show so that you can leave these 2 hours with some resources, with some helpful information. But first of all, you must recognize domestic abuse. And I think all too often, it's too difficult to recognize when you're in it. And so often people just are in an abusive relationship and they don't know that they are because the abuser blames them. And so then they come away thinking day after day, if I would just do better, if I would just be more compliant, if I would just be more submissive, if I would just do what my husband's telling me to do, then he wouldn't have to hit me all the time, or he wouldn't have to isolate me, or he wouldn't have to control me, or he wouldn't have to, force me to do these things, whatever it is, fill in the blank, depending on the type of abuse. There's so many different kinds of abuse. There's within marriage, sexual abuse. There is financial abuse, spiritual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. And oftentimes it's not just an either or. There will be kind of all of the above, or you'll find that the abuse it'll escalate and it will affect many areas of your life. Domestic violence, also called intimate partner violence, it occurs between people in an intimate relationship. And I think that's the saddest thing, because nobody gets married thinking that they're marrying an abuser. It's a shock. And our book is about making your home a place of love and peace. And anytime somebody stands at the altar and commits their life to someone, they're envisioning a love and peace full loving and peaceful relationship. They're envisioning this for their home. They're envisioning this for their future. And it's what everybody wants. But when that fairy tale turns into a nightmare, you've got to know it's not just you. But domestic violence, it takes place in many forms, the emotional, sexual, physical, all of these things. And I had a client of mine, and she sends me a Marco Polo with a black eye and a broken nose, and still didn't realize that her husband was an abuser. And she's actually still with him, and somehow believed that part of that was her fault. And I think that's the most tragic thing, for victims to not realize their value as a person. Everybody deserves to be in a healthy relationship. So if you're listening to me today and you've been hurt physically, emotionally, spiritually, in any way, and you have a feeling I might be in an abusive relationship, please reach out. I think if you think you might be, you probably are. Abusive relationships always involve an imbalance of power and control. An abuser, they will use this intimidation, hurtful words, behaviors, things like this to control their partners. It really is all about control. And yes, there's degrees. In some situations, the abuser becomes very psychotic and gets an adrenaline rush really out of being the abuser. But most of the time, you are convinced that you're the problem. They convince you that you're the problem, even though you can see that they are getting kind of a high. And actually, the abuse begins to be almost an addiction to them. They become addicted to being an abuser. So don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. You're not in this relationship because you're stupid. This is not about you. This is about their sickness, their own mental illness that causes them to be an abuser. And you can't rescue them. You can't fix them. And it's not your fault. Some relationships are clearly abusive from the onset, but most often it's very subtle. It's very subtle. And then when we look back, our hindsight can be 20/20, because what's happened is it's escalated and it's got worse over time. So you might be experiencing domestic violence if you're in a relationship with someone who calls you names, insults you, puts you down, prevents or discourages you from going to work or school or to spend time with your family. Someone who tries to control how you spend money, where you go, what medicine you take, if you get the vaccine or not, where they're really trying to control and force you to do what they want you to do. They control what medicines you take. They control what you wear, what you don't wear. I was listening to a YouTube video this morning, and I had seen it before. It was actually a TED Talk and on domestic violence, and it's very, very good. And her husband began controlling what she was wearing, and because he began being insanely jealous, which at first in the relationship seemed like, oh, how sweet. Like he doesn't want other men looking at me because, he loves me and I'm just his. So I'm going to please him in that way. But no, that's not a good sign, because if he's confident in the relationship, he's not going to try to control what you're wearing. And yeah, he would constantly criticize what she was wearing. Your pants are too tight, your skirts are too short, and be jealous no matter what she did or didn't do. It never cured his jealousy. But yeah, when there's an extreme control, that's a problem. That's a red flag. This jealousy, the scripture says that where there's jealousy and selfish ambition, there's every evil work. And you will see what happens in a domestic violence relationship. It goes to becoming really evil. It's like the abuser kind of sells their soul to the devil. And oftentimes it is through jealousy and selfish ambition, sometimes greed as well. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And sometimes these three things, even all put together, you can just you can sense the demonic presence in the relationship, and it's the opposite of what we want in a healthy relationship where we can have love and peace. But this jealousy will cause him to be so possessive, and then constantly accusing you of being unfaithful. So then it's like the accusation there. In fact, it reminds me of a scripture that says that Satan is the accuser of the brethren. And then when the abuser begins to accuse the victim, no, you're the abuser. You're the one abusing me. That's very, very common also. Also, they get very angry, and commonly will have other addictions like drugs or alcohol. But they become very, very controlling, trying to control every area of your life, threatening you with violence or a weapon. Like this one lady, for instance, her ex-husband held a gun to her forehead weekly, weekly, and you can't just say, well, why don't you get out? Why didn't she leave? Well, she didn't leave because she loved him. She didn't leave because she was convinced that it was her that was the problem, even though he's the one putting a gun to her head. She didn't leave because she was convinced that he would change, because he would apologize over and over and over again. And it's interesting the way it messes with your head. But listen, if you have someone that is pulling a gun, pulling a weapon on you, or hitting you, kicking you, shoving you, slapping you, choking you, or otherwise spanking you, um, or your children, in this abusive way, it's abuse. Or even wounding pets is common. Wounding, they'll be aggressive and violent towards you, their spouse, also towards the pets, towards the children. These are red flags. These are signs that you are married to an abuser. Forces you to have sex or engage in sexual acts against your will. Like, that's not right. Even in marriage, there is such a thing as marital rape. There is such a thing of being forced to do perverted sexual acts, that the man has probably got these ideas from pornography, and then he forces you to do these as if it's part of your marriage. And this is abuse. So if this is happening in your marriage, you need to know it's a sign of abuse. Blames you for their violent behavior, or tells you that you deserve it. Or they might even say women can't be violent, but men can. Are you kidding me? What in the world? And worst case, this just really upsets me. But when men quote scriptures to try to manipulate you to submit to their abuse, that's spiritual abuse, and it's wrong. And that is not at all what the heart of God is telling you. So, these are just some signs, and there are more, but this is just a list that I thought I would put out there today to recognize domestic violence. If you are in an abusive relationship, please, today is your day to take the first step to get help. Today is the day. You can call a hotline. You can seek help. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-7233. 1-800-799-SAFE. Call this hotline. This hotline is incredible. And you will see there is help on the other side of that line for crisis intervention. They will give you referrals. They will give you resources. There are shelters that I'm in contact with here in the local area. But you can even tell your healthcare provider. You can call women's shelters. But whatever you want the first step to be, you could even call 911. But whatever it is, take a step, break the silence. The secret cannot continue. The secret that you are being abused. So turn to a friend, a loved one, neighbor, coworker, somebody, but you've got to turn to somebody, and you have to tell them the truth about what's really happening behind closed doors. It's really important. And if the first person that you turn to doesn't respond correctly, turn to the next person. If you tell your mom or your mother-in-law or your pastor even, and they don't respond correctly, or a friend, tell someone else, call the hotline. Don't be discouraged from continuing to get help, because this is your life. and you've got to get the help that you need. You cannot stay. It will escalate, it will get worse. And what happens is ultimately the last step is you'll die. He will kill you eventually. He will kill you eventually. And that is what we're trying to avoid. We want you to live your life. We want you to live it abundantly. God wants you to live it abundantly. John 10:10 says that Jesus came to give us life and to give it more abundantly. But Satan came to steal, kill, and destroy. And that is what happens in domestic violence. It is really a demonic work of the enemy that is a tool, and people's lives are being destroyed. Families are being destroyed. Children's lives are being destroyed through domestic violence. And, stop the cover up. You've really got to reach out for help. And I know that it's sad. I know it's not the marriage that you wanted it to be. I know it's not the husband that you thought it was, but it is much better for you to be alive, for your children to be alive, and for you to accept that you can't change this person, but you can get help. So today's the day. All right, tell us a little bit of your experience and what was your first step? Where did you go?
Okay, well, I began to start of just questions what was happening in my life, and was this okay? Was this not okay? And so the first thing I did was turn to friends, and I just started telling them, "Hey, this is going on," and I just sort of gently started telling them things. I didn't go in and tell them everything, and I said, "What do you think about this?" And they just looked at me with shocked faces, like, "I can't believe this is happening. This is not okay. You need help." And I was glad that they were speaking those words into my life, but at the same time, I wasn't fully ready to jump out and get help. And one of the things I'd like to, kind of address is that it takes women on average 7 times of leaving before they've left,
Wow.
which is a long time, right? And so,
Yes.
yeah, I got free on my 3rd try. But you think about 3 is a lot, but 7 is the average, which
Wow.
means people are it's taking people longer than that sometimes.
Sure.
So whenever I went to my friends, I think they were kind of like, let's go, let's put a plan into action. And things got a little accelerated, and I wasn't ready yet. And so it took some time for me to kind of see and process, hey, this really isn't okay. And eventually I was ready. But I did begin to put a safety plan in place as I started to realize I was not safe. And I feel like that was critical, to have a safety plan and, what that looked like.
Yes. Let's imagine that we have a listener today that is feeling the urge to get a plan. Do you have some advice about what to do to create a safety plan?
One of the things that I did was I had a list of friends and I said, if I text this word, I'm going to give you my address and I need you to call the police, because I might not be able to call the police, but I might be able to text this word that he would not be able to identify. And so I had that plan in place with a number of different people. And then I had places I could go. If I needed to just grab the kids and go, I knew where I was going. I went ahead and packed a go bag that I kept hidden with like an overnight bag. One of the things I recommend doing, and I didn't do for quite a while, was gather passports, slip any documents out that you can, create this go bag so that whenever you're ready to go, you're ready. And then I would try and take cash, any cash. Like every time you go to the grocery store, get an extra $20, $40 out, cash back. And it just looks like it's part of the grocery bill. But cut anything you can so that you can start stashing this cash so that you have something whenever you're ready to run. Also know where the women's shelter is, find local resources, know whether you're being tracked and monitored, and assume that you probably are if you don't know.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's really important, especially in the world that we live in today. So you need to know exactly where you'll go and how you'll get there. Pinpoint your location. Frequently change your email password. Choose passwords that would be impossible for your abuser to guess. Clear your viewing history. Follow your browser's instructions to clear any record of websites and graphics that you viewed, because once they get the idea that you are trying to leave, then they just go all kinds of crazy, really. And that's something that we want everybody to know. It is create a safety plan for a reason. I was able to help a lady escape her abuser. And like you said, that's, when she and I first started talking, it was probably 6 months, and she was thinking about leaving. She had tried to leave, so I don't remember how many times it was, but I helped her create a safety plan, and then one day it was the day, and it was the time, and she did. She had an emergency bag packed that, had extra clothes, had extra keys, and she left that bag in her trunk, but it was disguised, and so she knew where she was going and what she was doing, and the important personal papers, money, prescriptions, passports, things like that to have, because you've got to have a plan, and then you have to know when it's time to go. There's a very small window of opportunity, and you just have to get out and be brave. It takes a lot of courage, and it's difficult because you don't want the kids to be scared, but it's impossible to do it without feeling afraid, but that's what courage is. You feel afraid, but you do it anyway, just because ultimately it's the right thing to do. So we encourage you to create a safety plan and to, I know women are very afraid because once they begin working on the plan, now they feel like they're being deceptive. They feel like their husband's going to catch on to what they're doing. And then the abuse goes from bad to worse. And, that might happen. That might happen. But one of these times it will be the last time that it happens because you'll be more ready to go. And I think it's important to just have the courage to do the best you can and to take the steps. So like you said, you don't take out all the cash all at once. You do it very strategically. It is very strategic to leave. But the first step is to tell somebody, and that's the most important thing. So I admire you for finally getting, the courage. I mean, you say after 3 times, you're really an overachiever at that point to just say, okay, now's the time. Enough is enough. And that's where you have to get to the point of saying enough is enough. I've tried everything, and I've just, enough is enough.
I felt like I needed to be able to look my children in the eye and say that I did everything. I left everything on the table and it still wasn't going to work. And I think something that I realized was I was married to my idea of who he was as his best person, but not who he actually was. And whenever you realize that, it's hard to stay.
That's a good point, and I think all of us do. And that's, we want to do that. We want to believe the best out of the person that we are going to marry. And we always know that people are going to change and they're going to evolve either better or worse. And that's the vows that we take, for better or for worse. So then we will come to a place of really trying to reckon with, okay, do I just need to keep my vows? Or is it time for me to say enough is enough? And if you are asking yourself this question, I just know that deep down at some point something will happen and you'll just know, deep in your knower, you will just know that it's time. And as far as the safety plan, yeah, protect your communication and location, because the abuser can use technology to monitor your phone, your online communication. They can track you. And if you're concerned for your safety, again, please get help. To maintain your privacy, especially make sure that you use your cell phones cautiously, use your home computer cautiously, remove GPS devices from your vehicle. Be careful. It's a safety plan and it's going to take courage, and you're going to have to be really careful to do it. And you need help. I know I was part of that safety plan, that you had in place, and I was just really happy to do it. And I've done it for many people. In fact, 7 different specific abuse cases that I've been able to help. Everybody needs a safety plan. And it's important because whatever situation you're in, it's not the end of the story, and you don't have to stay in an abusive relationship. In fact, you need to get out. I'm Trina. I'll be right back after the break. Today's topic, domestic violence. Stick with me.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Out-of-date carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleveland, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleveland, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they've got you covered.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio.
Welcome back to The Her Show. I'm Trina Titus Lozano, and today's topic is domestic violence. This is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so I'm raising awareness today so that you can do your part in helping victims of domestic violence, women and children that are stuck in this cycle of domestic violence. If you are in an abusive situation or marriage or family, you might recognize this pattern. Your abuser threatens violence, your abuser strikes, then your abuser apologizes, promises to change, offers gifts and incentives. Then the cycle repeats itself. And typically the violence becomes more frequent and more severe over time. The longer you stay in an abusive relationship, the greater the abuse will become, the greater the physical and emotional toll. And then you become depressed, struggle with anxiety, struggle with your own health, your own doubt and ability to take care of yourself. And then you become helpless and paralyzed often. And that's what we want to change. I want to give you inspiration today. And I have a guest in the studio with me today that was able to get the courage to move past this relationship that had her in the state of what I was just talking about. And that is the benefit of getting help, even though it's hard and nobody wants to go through the pain of it. There's a quote that I have said for many, many years, and I don't recall who wrote it originally, but until the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change, you won't. So see, what happened in your life is the pain of staying the same finally became so great that you're able to face the pain of change, to get through it, because ultimately you would have the better outcome. And so you did. You had the courage.
I did. And I'm so grateful. And it's so peaceful. And it's so hard to imagine that on the other side. You're just sitting there and you're thinking, how can there possibly be life? How can there be joy? How can there be hope? But there is. And it's so much better. And it's so much better to just have less, but have peace. And my children are doing better. It's just amazing the difference. Like, you think, I don't know how I can possibly get past this. And then you do. And you just get to realize how strong you really are. And that's just been awesome to get to watch.
It is. And I've been watching you from a distance, and it's been awesome to watch. And you've had help. you're actually in a place that is protecting you right now, and so we will protect your location as well. But you have help, and there is help available. So if I have listeners today that need help, please reach out for help. I'm happy to help you, and I will connect you with other people that can help you, especially if you're here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Here's a quote: "If you constantly find yourself trying to prove your worth, you've already forgotten your value." How did the domestic violence that you survived, how did that affect your self-worth?
Well, I feel like a big part of domestic violence is that they have to completely undermine you in order to make themselves feel like they're okay. And so that's all part of the game.
Mhm.
So they start early and they start slowly, and it gradually increases. And suddenly you have no idea, but they've completely destroyed your self worth.
Mhm.
And you get to this place where you don't know who you are anymore, and you feel like you don't have any worth because that's the only way that they stay in control.
Mhm.
And so, as this healing process is going through, it really is a lot of uncovering your worth and who you are and who God says you are. And, Casey Musgrave says healing doesn't happen in a straight line. And that's so true. There's just, you kind of ebb and flow in this healing process, and God will be faithful and he'll follow you through that.
That's right. And even speaking about God, when you have been raised in a Christian home or you've been raised with a strong faith, regardless of your background of what type or flavor or denomination of Christianity, it really affects your ability to see domestic violence clearly. And so I really love to help women in the church see and trust God beyond this and help women understand domestic violence is not God's plan for your marriage. It's not God's plan for your life. And there is no scriptural excuse to treat someone else that way. In fact, the scripture is the exact opposite of that. Jesus is very clear that we are each called to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love each other as ourselves. I mean, it is the opposite of being violent and controlling. And so, but oftentimes that begins to be confused when you grow up in church. It's just not talked about in church. What experience have you had with church? Because you were a Christian when you got married, you married a Christian. And so you tried to do the right things, thinking that maybe you would get a different result. And then here you ended up being in an abusive relationship. And so that obviously that's never anyone's intention. But when you grow up going to church regularly, it there's a different expectation, and then the church somehow doesn't really know how to handle your story of abuse. What's your experience?
Well, you're right, Trina. And, God never intended for the family structure to be a place of fear. And I think that's
That's
something
right.
that's very important to remember, that if you are living in fear of any kind of abuse, that's not God's intention.
Mhm.
And you need to get help. And one of my biggest fears was the church, actually, because I felt like divorce was not okay and that I wouldn't be supported if I got a divorce, and that, I made a covenant and I was going to stick it out. And I think there's a lot of value in that type of thinking if you are not being abused. And if you are being abused, then that's holding you captive, and that's not okay. There's a book called The Life-Saving Divorce, and I believe that's so true. I feel like in many cases that divorce does save lives. And that's really hard to talk about as a church because we focus on the marriage and saving the marriage and all of these different components. But really, what we need to be talking about is the health of the marriage, because a lot of times we're prioritizing the marriage over the people.
It's good.
And the wives, the husbands, they each have individual value. And to have an institution that just promotes marriage to what feels like at times statistics are more important than the people, then that's really hard to deal with. Um, and churches churches struggle with how to handle this. And I really like Sarah McDougall's book, Safe Churches. as a resource for churches who are wondering, how can we support survivors of domestic violence? How can we support women who are trying to come out of these situations? How can we be, just safe places and safe communities where these women can come and can thrive? Another resource for that is strongerco.org is offering trainings for churches and for pastors and how they can be supportive for women. And I've just heard too many stories. Once you become a survivor and you start to tell your story, other people start to tell their story back to you.
That's right.
And a friend told me a story. She said, I went to my church. I said, this is happening in my marriage. I need help. I don't know where to go. I need resources. I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know how I'm going to feed my babies. And the church, this big flashy church, said, well, here's a $20 gift card for groceries and we'll pray for you. And that's just not going to cut it.
No, she needed way more support than that. Way more support. And they just didn't have the understanding or whatever to recognize the real need in her life at that moment. I want to go back to what you said, the life-saving divorce, hope for people leaving destructive relationships. And it's actually available at Target, or you can order it online by Gretchen Baskerville. I'm sorry for saying that incorrectly. Gretchen Baskerville, Baskerville, the life-saving divorce, hope for people leaving destructive relationships. And this is a book that you've read and that you highly recommend. I have not read it yet, so I need to, but I'm happy to recommend it to people based on your recommendation. So thank you for mentioning that. And you're absolutely right. Every marriage cannot be saved. Every marriage should not be saved. When you're married to an addict, when you're married to a psychopath, when you're married to a man or a woman, a little bit of the time it's the roles are reversed, but most often it's the men that are the abusers and the addicts. Then what happens is you feel very pressured to stay married, and especially for the children. You don't want to be a single mom, and a $20 gift card is not going to get it.
No, it's not. And so often the partner of a marriage that's a Christian marriage and they're in the church. And in my case, we were in leadership at the church. This was very shocking for people to find out about because it was not visibly evident to anyone looking from the outside in. But oftentimes, spiritual abuse is being used to keep women in these positions.
Yes.
In my situation, my ex would say, if you were submitted to God, you would be blank. And then he had something specific that he would say. But if you were submitted to God, you would be, and then insert whatever level of control he wants to have over you, whatever he's wanting you to do, whether it's physically, sexually, whatever, to serve him. He wants that control. And so he's saying, if you were submitted to God, you would do this. And that's spiritual abuse. And it's not okay.
It's not okay. And it's not at all God's plan. In fact, God says that men should do like Christ did, and men should love their wives as Christ loved the church and laid down his life for them. I mean, Christ, he is the example of what a great husband should be by serving and laying down his life. Never about control, never about beating you over the head with a submission stick and quoting scriptures at you and trying to force you to obey him. We're to love and honor and respect each other. It's never about control. That's not love. That's not how God designed love. In fact, God designed love the absolute opposite. And so we have to know exactly what the scripture says so that if someone comes at us with spiritual abuse, we can stand up and say, no, actually, that's not what it says. But I know when you're being abused, you're afraid to stand up. You're afraid because they're blaming you. But I just want to encourage the listener who may be a victim of domestic violence or abuse, don't take the blame. This is not your fault. This is not your fault. And you are worth more. And it is not God's plan for you to stay silent or for you to stay in an abusive relationship. It's just not. It's just not.
Mhm. And you know what's happening is whenever we stay, we are doing the unloving thing. And that's really hard to wrap your head around, that I am being unloving by not calling him out on this, because I am allowing him to perpetuate the abuse cycle that he has put us in. And so to realize that I am doing the most loving thing by getting help, by leaving, by creating opportunity for him to repent and to heal and to get his own life back together. That's what's loving. But
Absolutely.
yeah, continuing to allow this to happen is not loving to yourself or to him.
Or to the kids, because you're showing an example to the kids that abuse is acceptable behavior.
Exactly. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. A lot of women do not feel like they can leave. They do not value themselves enough to leave. But once it crosses over and the children start being affected, then they realize, you know what? I have to protect my children. And that was a big part of it for me. I might be able to tolerate this, but I am not going to perpetuate this in a second generation. I am not going to show my girls that this is okay. I'm not going to show my boys that this isn't okay to treat a way to treat a woman. It's not. It's unacceptable. And I'm going to call them up to something more than that.
That's right. And even if your child isn't being abused, simply witnessing that domestic violence is very harmful, and children who grow up in abusive homes are more likely to be abused and have their own behavioral problems than other children. Just as adults, they're more likely to become abusers or to think that abuse is a normal part of relationships. And you might worry that telling the truth will further endanger you or your child or other family members, or that it might break up your family, but seeking help is the best way ultimately to protect yourself and your children, for this generation and for generations to come.
That's exactly right. And to realize that you have an opportunity here to be a cycle breaker and to set a new pattern, and that your grandchildren can grow up in something different. That's really a powerful thing to realize.
Very important. Don't take the blame. If your partner is blaming you for the violence in your relationship, that is normal. Abusive partners don't take responsibility for their actions. They continually will pretend, in their head they will tell themselves that they're a victim somehow. Then in their head they will tell themselves that their actions of abusing you are somehow justified. But I promise you, there is no excuse. There is no excuse. So do not take the blame. Um, your partner only exhibits abusive behavior when they're with you, which is really common. Abusers are often concerned with outward appearances, and so they are charming and stable to people who are just outsiders, and they don't know what's going on in the privacy of your own home. And this might cause you to believe that his or her actions can be explained by something that you've done, but it's not at all that. It's just that they are worried about getting caught. They're worried about their own reputation. They're worried about saving face of their own, what they look like. And it's not at all about protecting you. It's just about what they look like to others. So they go to great distances to be very charming and very kind and very fun to everyone else looking, so that people have no clue. And in fact, often they'll be so charming to everyone else that when you begin to break the silence, that people won't believe you right away. They'll say, "What? I've never seen them act like that."
That is so true. And that was definitely my experience. And that was really difficult because it felt like only a handful of people supported me, believed me, and I didn't have many safe places to go. But as time has gone on, they begin to watch them flesh out their supposed repentance, which they rush to just to gain control. And as they watch that repentance flesh out, they begin to see the cracks in the facade that this person has built up. And you know what? They're going to eventually see. And if they don't, that's okay too.
That's right. You're exactly right. Um, even if you, as the victim, have been pushed to a point where you have acted out verbally or even physically against your abuser, yelling, pushing, hitting them back, during the conflicts, you might worry that you are also abusive. But it's much more likely that you've acted in self defense, and because of the intense emotional distress of what you've been through. And your abuser then will often use this incident to manipulate you, describing that this is proof that you're actually the abusive partner. And if you're having trouble identifying what's happening, take a step back, look at the larger patterns of your relationship, and then review the symptoms of domestic violence. Because in an abusive relationship, the person who routinely uses these behaviors is the abuser. And then there's definitely, if you look at the patterns of the entire relationship, there's definitely, it becomes very obvious who's the abuser and who's the victim. You can't just take one specific situation. You have to look at all of the patterns, and the person who's more often and constantly on the receiving end is definitely the one being abused. So don't take the blame. Don't take the blame.
You know, Trina, that's a really good point. And I think that's often called reactive abuse. And a lot of people say that's not a thing, because when someone's treating you in this way that's not honoring to you and it's abusive, then your body has a reaction, and anger is a reaction, and anger signifies something is wrong. And then the abuser turns around and shames them for the anger. They stand up and they say, but look what they did. No, that is a normal reaction whenever we're being abused and treated wrongly, is to have that anger and to show. Obviously there's healthy ways to express that anger and there's unhealthy ways, but anger in and of itself is a sign that says something is not right and I need to address this here.
Yes, in fact, on the betrayal trauma web or Instagram that you were talking about, anger is healthy and appropriate for victims of abuse and betrayal. I mean, you should be mad at the abuse and betrayal that's been going on. Yeah, it's very important, the betrayal trauma recovery.
If you're not,
Instagram,
then it means that something's shutting down inside and you've probably been enduring abuse for a really long time, and you've just started shutting off those warning signals that your body's sending.
yeah, and even if in your case it isn't physical abuse, don't settle for emotional abuse thinking it's okay because it's not physical abuse. That's not okay either. It's not. We have to be brave enough to hold a standard of what a healthy marriage relationship is to be. And, we don't be afraid of that standard, and don't lower your standards. Hold the standard, hold that, because it's very important that you hold that, and don't settle for less. um Stronger Co. This is a quote from them. What is abuse? Abuse is a pattern of behaviors, any behaviors, used to gain power and control over another adult for the abuser's own selfishly motivated, harmful purposes. StrongerCo.org. StrongerCo.org. What is abuse? Abuse is a pattern of behaviors. Remember, this is not an isolated incident. This is not just one outburst of anger. This is a pattern. And oftentimes it has gone on for over a decade. And at some point you have to realize it's not me. It's them. And that is a pattern, and it's been a pattern. And I'm not afraid to blow the whistle and to say I am worth more.
And one of the things I'd like to address here is kind of something that's a hard subject to talk about. And that is how pornography is actually abuse. And a lot of people are going to buck at that and say, no, because it's so common and so accepted in our culture. But it is, because what happens is a man or whoever is using pornography, and then they are engaging with their spouse in a sexual relationship, but they are not disclosing. Maybe they aren't disclosing that they're cheating. Maybe that whatever it is that they're doing sexually that they are not disclosing, it automatically makes it impossible for the other partner to consent. And if we're not having consent, then that's marital rape.
It really is. And I think too many men underestimate the effects of pornography. They minimize the effects of pornography on themselves and how dark their thinking becomes. And so then when they're making love to their wife, as a woman, you feel like something's dark and off and weird, and it doesn't feel like you're being loved and cherished and comforted, and it doesn't feel loving. It feels like you're being taken advantage of. It does. It is more like of a rape mindset. And then once they begin this addiction, this sexual addiction of pornography, and then justify it. Listen, they have opened the door to so many problems in the marriage, and they become more and more angry now because they're expecting their wife to behave like some sort of a porn star. And she doesn't even know what's going on. Like, this is him in his own world, in his own mental place, of dark place, of pornographic, perverted, sexual things that he wants to act out in the marriage. And you're absolutely right.
And then it's going to escalate. It's going to start at one place. Oh, I only watch this. And then it escalates from there. Oh, I only do this. And then it escalates again. Because addiction, it's something that's unsatiable.
Exactly. And it gets darker and darker and darker. And you have to know, as a woman, marriage is a sexual relationship. I mean, it is. And of course it is. And we all know that going into it. And that's supposed to be a beautiful part of unity, a beautiful part of two becoming one. But never do we imagine that pornography is a part of this equation, and it is not supposed to be. That is clearly immorality, and it is devastating. It is devastating to us psychologically and emotionally to know that our man is addicted to pornography. It's devastating.
It is. And this is something that I want to share, because this was something that was told to me as I was contemplating leaving. And someone very wise and educated looked at me and said, you know, he has walked away from his covenant. You are free to release him. And that was such a gift to me, because I thought, you're right. I'm not walking away from him. He has already walked away from the covenant he's made. He walked away the minute the abuse started, the minute he started watching pornography, the minute, he did whatever. And
fill in the blank.
I am free to release him.
You're free to release him. And it's in the best interest of you and the children. You have to be healthy. You have to protect the environment of the home. And you have to protect your family from abuse. It is so important. The spirits that come in through the immorality and the pornography. And it's so important women have courage, stand up and say, this is unacceptable in our marriage. I will not tolerate it. I won't tolerate it. And I think we need to be real strict about that. I think we tend to be more lenient because men will just say, well, this is just what we do. No, this is not just what you do.
Well, part of why we're so lenient is because if we're going to draw a hard line, that's a hard line to draw.
That's a hard line to draw. But it needs to be drawn. It needs to be drawn. And especially if we're standing up for women that are being trafficked and sexually abused and all this stuff, how do we stand up for that? By going on the justice run, and then our husbands at home watching pornography, what's supporting the sex industry? So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being with us this hour and just opening up about your journey. And I wish you health and happiness and peace and joy for you and your children as you continue along this path.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Stick with me. I'll be right back after the break, continuing the conversation about domestic violence.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, JOCO Community Radio.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Greg Clugston in Washington. 17 people connected with a U.S.-based missionary group remain kidnapped after their abduction in Haiti on Saturday.
The missionaries, 16 Americans and 1 Canadian, are with the Ohio-based Christian Aid Ministries and are in Haiti building an orphanage. The U.S. State Department says it's working with Haitian officials, and the welfare and safety of U.S. citizens abroad is one of the highest priorities.
That's correspondent Julie Walker. Farmers and suppliers are worried about the impact of the John Deere strike. More than 10,000 Deere employees went on strike last week at 14 Deere factories in Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Colorado, and Georgia. Classes at Grambling State University are canceled today and tomorrow after yesterday's second deadly shooting at the Louisiana school within 4 days. The university says one person was fatally shot, 7 others wounded on campus early yesterday morning. The person who died was not enrolled at the school. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will lead tributes to David Amos, a conservative lawmaker who was stabbed to death late last week as he met with constituents at a local church. The attack shocked Britain, and it has fueled concern about politicians' safety. A 25-year-old British man is being held under the Terrorism Act on suspicion of murder. Officials say fire crews made significant progress against a wildfire that's been burning for nearly a week in Southern California coastal mountains. More than 1,600 firefighters battling the blaze in the mountains west of Santa Barbara were able to stop its forward growth. Federal officials said that blaze was 78% contained as of yesterday. Dow futures pointing lower this morning, down 108 points. More details at townhall.com.
Tell me why.
When you're hungry for tender brisket or some delicious homemade cobbler, then look no further than Leach Brothers Barbecue, located at 1106 East Henderson, Cleburne, Texas. Leach Brothers has been family-owned and operated since 1950. Take it from me, Taco Joe Orwinski. Todd and his family have been filling my belly breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a long time. Heck, I even have my own booth, open Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Come see them for dine-in, carry-out, and all your catering needs.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Hey, there's something you forgot to do. It sure is hot. Are you sweating like a dog? Wait, what? Dogs don't sweat. Oh no, you forgot to get your window tinted. Whether it's the kitchen window that sits in the sun for the hottest part of the day, or you just got new wheels, call Sharp Window Tinting in Burleson. 817-615-9379, or look them up on the web, sharpwindowtint.com.
You're listening to Joco Community Radio. Welcome back to The Her Show. That's Home Experience Radio with your host, Trina Titus Lozano, pastoral counselor and ordained Christian minister. She's here to give you advice and answer your questions about life, love, and other mysteries. Call our studio line now at 817-637-2585. Now, here's Trina.
Hello and welcome back to Joco Community Radio. We are the voice of Johnson County, Texas. We're live 365 on the TuneIn Radio Network. So to listen, simply go to tuneinjoco.com, where you can download the free app or listen live right there. We are also streaming simultaneously on Spreaker.com with select shows streaming to Facebook. All of our shows can also be found on any of your podcast platforms. So check out our lineup on our Facebook event calendar or on our website, jococommunityradio.com. But thanks for tuning in. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Next Level Claims. If you'd like to join the conversation today, feel free to call into the studio, 817-637-2585. And I have a dear friend on the radio with me today, and she's on the line calling all the way from Pennsylvania. Renee, welcome to the Her Show.
Hello, Trina. How are you?
I am so happy to talk to my friend. Thanks for calling.
Sure.
So we have been friends a long time. I met Renee when she and my husband were working together at IBM. And that was when I had only 2 children and I had a little girl and a brand new baby boy. So this was in 1986 and met her and just became fast friends. I mean, really fast friends. And then I met her boyfriend and I was a bridesmaid in her wedding. And what year did you get married, Renee?
1988.
In 1988. So we met in 84 and in 88 I was a bridesmaid in her wedding. And then fast forward to 2012 and we were just getting together with friends, having a little friends reunion. And you became very vulnerable on our little car ride. And you began to share a little bit of what was going on behind closed doors.
Yes, I was. The thing that I think I want to just preface this before I tell my story and let you lead me through the story, because we don't have enough time to go through the story. So I have to give you little chunks. But one thing I want to open up with is that when people share their story, as I am doing now, you feel very vulnerable, because even now as I sit here looking back 9 years, even though I lived it and I was in it, I can judge myself and why didn't I see it? So there's this fog, we call it the fog. When you are in an abusive situation, there are so many things that are happening all at one time that you can't seem to process them. Your reality doesn't make sense. You've been gaslit. Gaslighting means that person is literally trying to make you crazy. You say something happened, you know it happened, and they tell you it didn't. So as I tell this story, it's almost as if I'm telling the story of someone else, even though it happened to me.
Yeah.
So I'm almost apologetic. And so when we sat in that car ride, I showed you a video of my ex-husband slapping my teenager on the stomach because he was, what was it? I remember what. Oh, they were arguing over a basketball game.
Yeah.
And he pinned him down. And I looked at that and I videoed it. And the reason I videoed it, because I just gotten to the point, that was the very first video I did. And I got to the point where I thought that if I could just get video, show it to the pastor would talk to my ex, and then everything would be okay. He would see the light. Like, this is literally what I believe. And you have to understand, this person, I'm 5'6", and this person's 6'5". This was the best thing I could do to protect, my son at that time. And looking back at it is, I knew that if I would have gotten physical and tried to pull him off of him, I could have gotten hurt. But worse than that, that wouldn't have been the problem. The problem is I wouldn't have been able to protect the rest of my children. And I would not, and he could have taken it out on everybody.
Sure.
So the best thing I could do is video it. I took it to a Christian counselor. The counselor never told me that was, and kind of at the time in Pennsylvania, that wasn't really wrong, because even children and youth got to see that as this progressed. And because of the marks or whatever the rules were at that time, that wouldn't have even been a problem. I know, it's weird, right?
Yeah.
It's weird. I have a video of him being hit. But needless to say, the counselor didn't really tell me the grievousness of it, how bad it was. And so I continued to carry it, just literally not sure what to do. And then I showed it to you. And then
yeah,
you said to me, go ahead, you probably remember this clearer than I do.
I was just I was very alarmed. And do you remember what I said? Because I think I remember what I said.
I remember you saying we were sitting waiting to meet the other friends that were in my wedding, the four of us, and this was your friend group too. You said to me, you need to get a divorce tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what I think I said. And you had been married at this point a really long time.
Yeah, from 88 until
2012.
So
Yeah.
24 years, yeah.
Yeah, and 5 children, and I mean, I'm a marriage counselor. I don't recommend divorce. I mean, I am very, very, very pro marriage, but I saw that and I knew immediately he's an abuser. I mean, it was not just a spanking. It was not just a discipline situation. It was just not playing around it was abuse. And it was abuse that was caught on video, and he didn't have any sort of concern that the abuse was being videoed. He continued
100%.
with the abuse knowing it was being videoed, and he was almost proud that he was abusing his child. It was very bizarre to me, and I knew immediately that I was just going to have to go with the bottom line to tell you, this is going to be a hard road, but you can't stay married to him. I mean, he's an abuser. And then it took us down this path of conversation, a very short conversation at that time. And then we expanded later for me to say, when did he start hitting you? Like, I knew that he hit you too. I didn't know, but I knew. And then you began to tell me that, yes.
That's that is so true. You knew because you understood what abuse looked like.
Right.
And every physical abuse, all domestic violence doesn't go into and always include hitting. Okay. That's a progression. They first have to wear you down.
Sure.
All domestic violence does include verbal abuse.
Yes.
And the wearing down of your character, your innermost being. As a matter of fact, going back real quickly to that video and the hitting, and the fact that you just brought up that point, that he did not have a concern for me having it on my phone. Do you realize what that did to my psyche? I'm already off kilter. I'm already brainwashed into thinking I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm lazy, I'm no good for nothing. He told me that if we get a divorce, he'll get the kids. He told me, you name it. Like, I had been worn down over a period of time. And so with him having no regard for me having that, do you see how I thought that what I even had, even though there was this part of me, by the grace of God, there was this part of me that knew something in that had to be wrong. But the person that I had built up to be my provider, my caretaker, my other half, did not seem to have any problems with it. He told me I was a terrible parent, a terrible disciplinarian, that I should just work and make money and let him tend to the kids. All of these things. And I kept trying to do them and to please him, and I always was failing. So here I'm failing again. So why would I think that this is wrong? Because he told me it wasn't. I know this makes me sound insane, but I want the women listening to this. I want the sisters of women that you think that maybe there's something going on and you can't figure out why she doesn't wake up. I want you to pray, and I want you to pray hard. And I want you to pray that those things that are in the darkness will come to the light.
That's right.
Because over time, it can happen. I'm not saying it's going to be immediate, but thankfully, the darkness did turn into light for me. And Trina was part of that breaking of that and showing me that just by that comment, you should divorce him. I was like, wait, what? I don't even believe that divorce should happen. And now she tells me this. And then I did open up that he did hit me.
Yes. And not once. He hit you many times over the course of your marriage. But like you say, it wasn't just that, but he hit you and blamed you, of course. But it wasn't just that, and that's the whole thing about the cycle of abuse. It's like a volcano, it doesn't just start with a sudden outburst of physical force, but rather with this intense internal pressure, and abusive patterns, then they develop in these stages of the agitated stage to the acute stage to then the apologetic stage. And it's just like, it's just this cycle that you're in and you don't even know what's happening. But as an outsider, for me to see that and to see the contrast of who I knew him to be publicly by just meeting with him and meeting him at different social events. I mean, he is, not just was, he's a very charming, fun guy. And so to see then the contrast in that video, what he would do in the privacy of his own home versus what he seemed to be publicly, I was really very shocked and very taken back. And I knew immediately this is an abuser and this is serious. Immediately just knew it was serious. And it was difficult, but you know what? I just have to tell our listeners, the truth is you are beautiful. I mean, and I'm not just making that up. I mean, she's a very pretty lady, very pretty. Even at our age now, I think we've held our middle age pretty well, girl. You're a beautiful woman. You are a hard-working businesswoman, business owner. You were at a young age, you were an executive in IBM. I mean, you were promoted and you were given responsibility, and you brought in the such a tremendous amount of income for your family. I mean, you were a major contributor, if not at some points, probably I don't know. Did you make more money than him at the time that he was saying that?
Yeah, yes. But he hid that. He confused me on that. Yes, I did. I proved.
But
it
you
on
were such a
paper
hard
to him.
worker. I mean, it
brought
was
in
proved on
somebody
paper.
else.
Yeah. You were a hard worker, and your kids would not get taken away from you. You were a loving, caring, hardworking, incredible mother. But yet this belief that how would you even be able to keep your kids? How tragic that he had confused you to the extent that he did. But that's what abusers do.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, we tend to forget the things that happened to us. Like over 24 years, I kept some journals. I found some things after we were separated, and I would be finding them during the journey, and I'd read some of these things. And if I hadn't written them, like as soon as I read them, I remembered them. Yes, that happened. Sure. But the thing with me is there was two things that happened in the first few months of marriage, which is very common in abuse. Once they get you isolated, once they pull you away from their world, when we got married, I moved away from my whole world. I quit my job at IBM, and then it's like you become their captor. You can read about this. If you read about domestic violence, it's very stereotypical. A lot of times it happens on the honeymoon.
Yep.
And that was pretty much, how it happened here. And it was within the first 3 months. We had an argument in a vehicle driving somewhere. I got a little snarky. See, we make excuses. I took the blame on that I got snarky. He literally pulled me into the back of the work van, and he hit me on my butt 3 times and disciplined me. And I remember sitting there thinking, he told me I deserved that because I was snarky. And sure enough, we had already built up to those things already that, I'm a little mouthy, which as I look back, it's like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't stand up for myself. So I learned over the 24 years that I pretty much have to do, what is said, because anything beyond that is considered I'm out of control. And so he kept wearing that. It's like they take that one little weak thing about you and they turn it and they spin it on you. And you'll find that many outspoken women are in these domestic violence situations. And this is the key. This is not the trigger. This is the little gem for them that they found, that they can take that thing that you're insecure of, that little thing that you need to work on, and they'll keep spinning it and spinning it and spinning it and using it against you. So you end up, he hit me. He told me it was discipline. I was wrong. I literally sat there and think I had been married and divorced at a young age. I sat there and I put my pride before my decisions. And I said, I cannot leave this. I pictured going back to my mom's house, and I thought, I can't do it. I put pride before asking God what he wanted me to do. Wow. And because I didn't think God believed in divorce, I was therefore stuck, and I had to take responsibility. So I did. And then it happened a little bit later. Another time happened. And then I literally kind of forgot this. We went on having children, and it didn't arise until again in 2012. 2010, we went to Christian marriage counseling. The guy knew that he literally hit me took me into the bedroom, put me across the bed. Now, of course, I'm like, he's not manhandling me. And I've got kids in the house. And he put me over the bed and said, spanked me with a paddle. And then he said, if you ever do this again, I'm going to pull your pants down in front of your children and paddle you. We go to a counselor. I'm like, this is wrong. This is wrong. We sit in a counselor and the counselor doesn't tell me, A, that's domestic violence, B, that it's wrong. So he kind of made me think that I was out of line.
Wow.
Yes. But in retrospect, counselor, if he tells me that's wrong, like literally, I have to think about this. And as much as I think that was wrong, let's think about this. If he would have told me that was domestic violence, that I should get out of the marriage and I should leave, do you realize I could have used that in the next argument, said that counselor said this. He could have hunted the counselor down, hurt the counselor. But number two, he could have gotten so infumed at me, he could have hurt me.
Absolutely.
I don't know what Christian counselors I don't know what counselors are supposed to do. But I can tell you, you can go find your domestic violence shelter in your community. They don't have a sign out. You're going to have to find them in the phone book. You're going to have to Google domestic violence shelter and you will find them and they will take care of you. They will lead you where you need to be led because they know what to do.
That's right.
That's who you can trust.
1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-SAFE. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And they are equipped to help you and to help you get a safe plan to escape your abuser. And I, as a counselor, I know that I am always on the lookout for domestic violence situations. And when people come in for marriage counseling, that I can see very clearly, oh no, they don't need marriage counseling. There's abuse here and this has to be treated seriously and addressed. But as a counselor, it is very fragile and you have to be very, very cautious because you want to always keep the safety, like you said, of the victim and the children in mind. And so it does take some effort to be very cautious. But a book that you read really was helpful to you way later on, up in 2012, when you were making the decision, should I leave or should I stay or should I leave or how are we going to move forward with this? But what was the title of the book by Lundy Bancroft?
Wait,
should I stay or
again?
should I go? Is that the name of the book? Should I stay or should I go? I'm not sure. By Lundy Bancroft, and it's about domestic violence.
No, I'll tell you the one that really helped me was by Barbara Roberts.
Oh, okay.
And I am looking through, but that's a good one. Lundy's a good book, but I'm looking for the one, she's in Australia. Goodness. I must have loaned it out because it's not in my bookshelf right here.
You had a list of resources.
Excuse me?
You had a list of resources on your website at one point. Do you still have that?
I still have that. It's at ReneeRobertsKopp.com, and that's K-O-P-P. Renee, R-E-N-E-E, Roberts, R-O-B-E-R-T-S, K as in kite, O, P as in Peter, P as in Peter.com. And if you go to my very first blog, that is my resources. And that would have been in October, I think, of 2014 or 2015. And it's purely there. The blog is titled, If I Were Going to Help You, This Is What I'd Have You Read. But she basically wrote a book about divorce is not wrong. And where I think you're going with this is I had to get to this point where I realized that I had put marriage as an idol, as a God before my God. And I had made that marriage, staying together, more important than listening to the voice of my father.
Yes.
And so therefore, I felt that I had to stay in that. It had become a temple of something I worshiped, that this marriage was beyond, it could never be broken. And so because of that, I could never even entertain it.
Yeah. Yes, the book by Lundy Bancroft that I was trying to remember, I had the title wrong. Why does he do that? Inside the minds of angry and controlling men. And that's the thing, as an abused woman, you just cannot figure out why he would do this. It just doesn't make sense in our mind, but in their psychotic, controlling mind, it is all about the control. It's all about the twisted version of what they are thinking that love is. But we really need to educate ourselves so that we know what love isn't. And I love your point, Renee. We cannot hold the institute of marriage as an idol. I realized that at one point in my life, I was holding marriage and family as like everything. It just was everything. Like, stay married at all costs. And I remember when at one point I thought, I can't be afraid to stay married if that's what I need to do and what God wants me to do. But also, I can't be afraid to get divorced because I cannot lower my standard of what a healthy marriage should be. This is what God says a healthy marriage is. And so that's got to be what it is. And nothing can lower that standard. And I need to honor the Lord by holding a standard of what a healthy marriage is. And everybody deserves to be in a healthy marriage. And abuse is wrong and it's not okay. And it's hard to get through the pain of it. It's hard to change. And it's really hard to go through the legal process of all of that. My goodness. So, what are some of the other things that you have learned since 2012 during the process of recovery over the last 9 years?
How much time do you have?
I know.
What
You've
have
learned
I
so
learned?
much.
I have learned something you taught me as I was in the depths of going through this situation where we ended up, I had a breakdown, an emotional breakdown. There was an intervention of some work friends. I admitted I was in an abusive situation. This was all within weeks of you pointing out your thing. It's what I would call it the year of the unraveling. Things were starting to unravel and I was starting to see things.
Yeah.
I was starting to listen. And as I was going through this, it ended up, a friend of mine went and I filed a protection from abuse order in 2012. My husband at the time was arrested. I wake up the next day and I think, this is not the little story you think of as a little girl, as a little 9-year-old girl dreaming, playing with your Barbie dolls and then getting married. Do you ever think that you're going to say, my husband is in jail? But we had literally in the last 9 years, I had to speak to him 3 times. We did no contact. That was what was recommended when you're dealing with people of certain behaviors. It's best to do no contact. And I had a support system around me. I got a 5-year PFA. He was in and out of jail a few times because of his actions towards me, not staying away. And during this whole thing, you kept saying to me something that I still use today. I still share it with people. And if anybody's listening to this, they can hold on to this because it is so true. You'd say to me when I'd call you in despair, you'd say, it's not over. There's more to this story. This is not the whole story.
It's not the end of the story. That's right.
9 years later, I'm in a whole different place. Like when you let me know you wanted me to come on here and talk today, I had to remember. I haven't forgotten. It shaped who I am, but I had to go back to remember because it's so easy to move on and forget. And so coming to a place of remembering that this really did happen to me. This is not some story that I just said a whole bunch of times that didn't happen to me, but that is kind of where I feel a little bit. So,
but that's awesome. Like that is healing, Renee. That's such healing because, when we can tell our story without feeling pain as though it's current pain. I mean, there are the scars and we remember the pain, but it's no longer your present tense reality. I mean, you've been healed and I'm so proud of you. And you have not stayed bitter and angry and resentful about that. Therefore, you continue to stay solid and stay focused on the next season of your life, which was just parenting. You had to finish raising these 5 boys to be men. And we're going to break here for a little bit, but please stay with me, Renee, because I would really like for our listeners to hear a conclusion to this story and bring us up to the present tense situation right after the break. So will you stay with me?
Yes, I will. And I just thought of more things I learned, so I wrote them down. I'll be ready when we come back.
Oh, good, good, good. That is wonderful because, y'all, friends need to support friends. And that's what this is about. And this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So that's what today's show is about. And actually, I'm going to continue this topic next Monday because it is such an important topic. So near and dear to my heart. I'll be right back after the break.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395, 800-709-4395.
Abnormal realities. All right. So let's see. Oh, this is a cool one. You may affect magnetic phenomena that makes credit cards unreadable after you've been carrying them. Do you have a problem with your credit cards?
I do not.
He is not a slider.
I'm not a slider.
All right. And number everything that's no more numbers.
What are you doing? I'm just thinking about how much of a train wreck we are.
Give me a hug.
No, I'm not hugging you. God, how long is this show going to go? Can't believe you got to the end of the story and you went, humana. There are no more numbers. What?
I thought there's another one. I tried playing it out. It just rolled over on me.
Abnormal realities.
Every time I look at the clock, the break gets further away. I don't understand.
With Ron and Rocky. Weekdays, 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. on JoCo Community Radio.
Out-of-date carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleveland, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleveland, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they got you covered.
You're listening to JoCo Community Radio.
Welcome back to The Her Show. I am Trina, and I'm here with a wonderful guest in my studio that is in the process of the journey, but has successfully escaped from her abuser, and I think that's incredible. So welcome to the studio. And then on the phone line, I've got my dear friend Renee that has successfully completed the process of escaping her abuser and moving on with her life to full and complete healing. So thank you, Renee, for sharing your story with us today. It's an important time for us to think back so that we can help others, right?
Yes, it was quite a journey.
Quite a journey. And I cannot believe it started 9 years ago. And here we are. Like literally at the time, it felt like it was going so slow because it took quite a while until the divorce was final. And there was so much of a legal process. But you did it one step at a time, one day at a time. You did it.
Yep, one step at a time. And people like you have a blessing to have a good support system. It helps a lot. You know, I have a few tips here that I thought of that I can go through. I don't want to run out of time. I don't know which one's more important, but
you go, girl.
Okay. Well, one of the things is at the very beginning, as you know, when the guy is removed from the house, and when I say guy, let's back up. I don't know if you started on this, but when 15% of domestic violence happens to a man. It could be man to man or female to man. So, but because the majority happens to a woman, that is why we say her. And so I am not blind
well,
to that.
I did mention that. I did mention that. And statistics do vary anywhere from 75% of the time, 85% of the time, even 95% of the time, it being the man that is the abuser. So that's why we're specifically talking to the women that are the victims today, because they are the vast majority. So yeah. So yeah, go ahead. Tell us.
Yeah. So you had said to me, I'm trying to think how this happened. Right after he was removed from the house and put away, and there was no contact, and we were at the beginning stages of the protection from abuse order, he went to social media and he was doing that whole apologetic thing, which at the time I was like, oh, look, Trina, he changed. I'm showing my domestic violence counselor, which, I had a few different ones. I had one at the shelter. I had one that helped me personally in a different way with the children. And so I had a few different ones, which was very helpful for me to get through it faster.
Mm-hmm.
But I kept saying, look, he's changing. And two people spoke to me that I repeat this all the time. One was you, and you said, you know what? How about you not look at his Facebook? You stop looking, and I will look. And when I see he has changed, then I will tell you. That was the first thing that happened. That was wonderful, because he was trying to pull me in, because we're hurting so bad. We don't want to do this, but we have no choice, right? We're doing it to protect ourselves. But, there could be this relationship that's unhealthy, that this codependency usually, where you just can't, you just like ripped part of your body away and you're having a hard time letting go.
Yes.
You just can't seem to let go of it.
Yeah.
And then I had my business coach happen to say to me, he goes, did he sound like this? He said, because this is what forgiveness sounds like in your situation. And this is what he said to me. When you hear this, you will know. And he said, this is what I should be hearing. Oh my gosh, Renee, I can't believe that I did this to you. I don't deserve you. I don't even deserve to be speaking to you here right now. If you never want to talk to me again, if you never want to see me again, I totally understand, because what I did was so incredibly wrong. Silence.
Yeah. Crickets.
And I never heard that, because you know what came after that? But if you wouldn't have done this, if you wouldn't have done that, then I wouldn't have done what I did.
Exactly.
A matter of fact, Trina, I have news that you don't know. Just a few days ago, one of my children told me that just a week ago, now keep in mind, this man went to jail for 3 months. He was on probation for years. 5 years, there was a PFA that protected me, which is almost unheard of. And then he also had limited time with his children. Even with all of this, he said just a few weeks ago that he doesn't think he did anything wrong. And he hit me, and it was videoed. And he went before a court of law. It was with 1 hour, a jury of 8 men, 4 women found him guilty of hitting me, of harassment.
Wow.
And he went to jail for that. And still to this moment, so here's your takeaway. What you guys told me 9 years ago, that he will never change, is true. Now listen, a few people will change. There's a few guys out there. Lundy talks about that in his book. Some of them will change. But the one counselor told me, when you're dealing with people with this behavior issue, which I refuse to name because it's overused in today's society.
It is.
But when people behave this way, there's really only one way to get cured of it. And this one wonderful counselor said, who was working with both of us, just to help us co-parent, he said, there's only one way to heal, and it's to be cured of this, and it's by death.
Yeah.
That's how bad and ingrained it is in who they are. The other thing he said, but it also can die by death at the cross.
I
so
love
this is that come to Jesus, Paul on the road to Damascus experience, where you die to everything you are, your being, your understanding, your knowing, everything. You have to say that you have screwed up to the 1 millionth degree, and you're willing to lay it all down.
That's
Most
right.
people are not willing to do that.
That's right. And accept. I always say, if there is a repentance, you will see a full accepting. They accept full responsibility, no blaming anybody at all except full responsibility. There is regret. There is remorse. They will do anything and everything to repair the situation, and they will repeat it never. But when you have someone that is chronically making excuses and saying, well, I did this, but they did that, or what I did wasn't as bad as what this person did, or at least I didn't do this, but all I did was this. I mean, on and on, you're just going, no. No, that's not going to work.
And when they're continuing to make life hard, like making it hard for the kids. The very first lawyer, when we went in for the what's the money part called, when you're going through and taking care of sharing the money, which at that point I didn't, the main paycheck was coming from him, and my business was not making a lot at that time, at that exact moment. And he went in there for support. That's the word I'm looking for. Support. The lawyer looked at me as we left. He put me up on the stand. I had no idea I was going to go sit at his stand. I thought I was going into like this room with our lawyers. I was literally put on the stand and grilled questions. And when we left, my lawyer looked at me and she goes, that was all him. He put you up there. He did not have to do that.
Wow.
And I never forgot that. Like, he wanted to make it painful to me. To this moment, he will go take me for support. I have one child that's still 14 years old and I get money from. And, I take it. Like my mom says, take it. Hey, you might as well take it. But it's like he goes and almost every year he goes in and he wants to make sure he's not giving me another penny more than he has to.
Yeah.
That is not love.
That is not.
Preferring other people. You can say you're a Christian all day long, but when you are nickel and diming and keeping money away from your children, the amount of money I get does not make a dent into running a household and having 3 of my kids still live here, and it doesn't even dent it, and I only get paid for one. And he gives them nothing. A $10 Christmas gift, they tell me.
Yeah. Nothing has changed. And that's the whole point. Nothing has changed. And even more tragically, his attitude of, I didn't do anything wrong, hasn't changed. And actually with him, and what I see as a pattern with abusers, is they actually think that they're the victim. Like, I was the victim. I was falsely accused, even though it was, in his case, a jury. It's like, wait a minute here, it was not just falsely accused by his ex-wife. This is like actually a trial that he went through. But you know what? You have come out on the other side. You have raised your boys. Now they are men. And you know what? The abuse cycle has stopped because you have said enough is enough. You guys cannot become abusers like your dad. And so I mean, they have been in counseling ever since 2012. And so they have their own battles to fight, and they have their own path that they're going to have to take. But this has been tremendously tragic for the whole family, but it would have been more tragic had you not have drawn the line to that day that you called the police. Finally.
And you want to know why I called the police is so much why so many women call the police. Up to that point, in that fog, right? I was in the fog. And if you've been there, you know that fog.
Yeah.
And as it's starting to, I'm getting glimpses of sanity. I'm getting glimpses of truth. The reason it was is the people that did the intervention for me, they said one thing that changed everything. They said, do you want your boys to grow up and think this is okay?
Right.
Do you want them to do this to their spouse? Because if you continue like this is how it will be. And that was so true. And that's what pushed me through. And you know what? At the beginning, my boys believed him.
Yeah.
And that's painful. But listen to me, ladies. Do the right thing. Listen to your team. Don't go back. Don't give in. Almost 100%, I would have to say, try and go no contact, because he has nothing to say that's going to help you and keep you healthy. I'm not a counselor. I don't play one on TV. I agree. That for sure.
I agree.
Because it works for me, I feel like it was so healthy. And by that, your kids will watch you and they'll eventually figure it out. Don't worry. It could take a year, 2 years, 5 years, but I can guarantee you someday they will come and tell you.
Thank you.
They will, they'll understand. They'll see the truth.
Yeah. And I know that's something that I encouraged you over the years to see the bigger picture, because there's nothing more heartbreaking than for your child to believe your abuser, where he manipulates their mind, he manipulates their thinking, and where they start to believe him that none of this would have happened if it wasn't because mom, didn't take out the trash like I told her to, or I would have never had to spank her.
Oh, and that's exactly what that final fight was over, the throwing away of the orange juice container. That is 100% what it was. And, there was something else you said. There's two other things I have that I'll go through real quickly here. Is one thing is you said to me something about raising my kids. You said, Renee, I want you to focus on your kids and I want you to make them your priority. Well, there was this gaping hole that I had this other person in my life, and, I wanted to date. I wanted to have another guy, but you said no. It's out of the question. A, you're not healthy. B, you need to figure things out, and you need to just realize until your baby is 18, you really shouldn't be dating. You should really focus on raising your kids. And you know what? I watch women go right out and start dating 3 weeks later. And it's like, I don't see anything good in that. I'm sorry. I'm going to be very judgmental on that. And here's a statistic I heard. I heard that for every 4 years, that 4 or 5 years you're married, you need to take a year, and it'll take you a year to get healthy. So in my case, 24 years. So let's say it's 4 years. That would be 6 years of no dating to get healthy from that relationship. And on the heels of that, let's look at this and say, counseling. Here's another thing where I feel like people get too anxious with and they jump back into the pond a little bit too quick. With counseling, I see a lot of people stop their counseling. I don't care what it is. They stop their counseling when the pain goes away. Okay. So they get to the counselor and they call and they make the appointment. They open up their checkbook, they pay, and it's worth it to give up their time because they're in pain. The counselor gets them to a point where they can literally function now in the day.
Yeah.
And then they stop going to counseling. And I don't care if it's for an eating disorder. I don't care if it's for domestic violence. I don't care what it is. I've just watched that people, you need to go past it. It's like when you're losing weight. Oh, I get to my ideal weight. How about you just work a little bit further? How about you just stay on that diet just a little bit more?
That's
so that
right.
When you do spring back, you're springing back to where you want to go. And that's how I look at that.
Yeah.
Like counseling, you just keep going over, not till the pain is gone away. I don't know where that point is.
But until new habits are being developed and new patterns of thinking, because you've been so psychologically damaged from the years of abuse, it takes time to heal. And you're right. You have to wait until you have totally new patterns of thinking, completely new neuro pathways have been developed so that you will be free to then move on with your life at some point. And I love that you made this point. And I love even more that you took it seriously and that you did not jump into a new relationship with another guy, because that is so easy to do. I'm talking with a client right now. Everything in her wants to get on a dating website. And I'm like, you know what? You'll end up with another abuser. Why? Because you are so desperate. Stop being desperate. You're not in a dating season of life right now. You're in a parenting season of life, and you're the only psychologically healthy parent they've got. They need you.
Amen.
Yeah, they need you, and they need your full attention. They can't have part of your attention. You do not have time. There's not enough hours in the day for you to be distracted by your love life. And we have to understand you're going to live to be 100 years old. I believe that in Jesus' name. My grandma's 98. I think I'm going to live to be that long, but I think you will too. But who knows what's going to happen? But the bottom line is there's a lot of life left after your kids are up and out. There's a lot of life left, and you can get remarried and still have 30 more years with the person. That's a wonderful person. The YouTube video that I put of this TED Talk, I put it on my Facebook today. Her story is just incredible. And yeah, she's married with 3 children and a black lab, and living the happily ever after, but she waited for it, and wait for the right time and the right person. And I really do encourage that. Now, she left her abuser before she had kids. So then she got remarried and then had kids. But everybody's situation is slightly different. But if you have children, raise your kids first. Otherwise, you're just opening them up to potential of even more abuse with trying to do a blended family or whatever. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And it's not easy. And I know it's not easy, but it's really important for the health of your kids.
Yeah, the act of love is putting others' needs before yourself. So I would challenge anyone that is in this situation who really feels they need this, and the time of life is waning and they're missing their hour of dating and all of that. I'm 57, and I started this journey, this separation at 48. So I haven't gotten any younger. You know what? When the act of love is putting others before yourself. So this is one of those challenges give yourself. If you really, really want to give your kids what they need, and what they need is you, and they're hurting more than you are.
That's
possibly.
right. Yeah.
And here you are dividing your attention and giving it to someone else. They can't process this. They need you, because it is distracting when you date. You
Absolutely.
do your time, your phone calls, your texting, your attention, all that stuff does get diluted, and they don't have it.
Yeah.
And so show them that you do love them more than yourself, and put them first. I truly believe God will bless that.
I believe he will too. I know he will. And I just want to welcome my friend that's in the studio with me today. And I'm not saying her name today because her case isn't closed. But did you have any comments just about your situation or what you heard Renee say? What are your thoughts?
I loved what she said. And one thing that I wanted to address was, I feel like a lot of people, you may not be going through a situation where you're in a domestic violence situation, but there's a good chance that you know someone who is. And I just wanted to share some of the ways that people just loved and supported me, and how you can love and support someone who's going through domestic violence in their life. And one of those is just to make specific offers. Like, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, call me if you need anything." And you know what? I'm never going to call. But the people who delivered groceries, the people who watched my children, the people who packed or helped me unpack, who showed up with dinner, those were the people who were there. And those were the ones who really just walked through this with me. And, those who walked through this journey, even whenever I wasn't successful leaving the first or the second time, and they were like, we're still here. We're going to walk through this with you. That was invaluable. And it gave me the courage to make that jump and to seek safety. And, I think a lot of women are just sitting there thinking like, well, when is the cavalry going to show up, with a moving truck, and they're all just going to come in and rescue me? But the truth of it is that you have to make the decision that I am going to rescue myself. And you have to realize that you are capable, you are not stuck, and you're able to get yourself out of the situation. And it's going to take some thinking, going to take making a plan, but you are capable of removing yourself from this situation. And I think that's so important to just recognize and know that you can be empowered to do that.
That's so good. I read a quote today. It says, healing trauma is like cleaning up garbage from your front yard. It's not your garbage, but it is your front yard.
I love that.
I love that too, because really you are the victim, and all this garbage that your ex has, put on your front yard, or actually in your house and all over your whole life, has turned into garbage. And it's not your fault that all that happened, but it is your, you do need to help do your part to clean it up. It's your yard. It's your yard. It's your house. It's your home. It's your kids. It's your psychological and spiritual well-being. So let your friends in. And if you're a person like me that was just a friend of Renee's, and or listen, do whatever you can. I know in her case, I didn't live locally, but I did my part to at least reach out to the boys and to call them and to build relationships with them and to be a support system to her, to send them Christmas money when I knew she hardly had any and things like that. Not that I could do it all the time, but to do whatever you can with what you have where you're at. And that's a really good point. And it does make a difference, doesn't it, Renee?
100%. And great point there with your guest. Another thing that people who are watching people go through something, the thing that helped me one of the best is, being a Christian, I didn't know where people stood with regards to this. They were hearing his story. They don't know what to say. I'll tell you that some of the best things that people did say to me is they just reached out on Facebook or in a text or however, and they just said, I hear you. I'm sorry you're going through this. This is terrible. If you need anything, it wasn't direct like she said, but what it said to me was, it let me know, I want to say what side they were on.
Well, that
Because
you
there
weren't
are
being
actually
judged.
People that will believe an abuser. And so just knowing that they were there and I could call them meant the world to me. And then those people that I never heard from, I had to figure they A, didn't care, or B, they thought that I caused my own problem. And here's the thing, and I'll end with this because I know time's running out, is when we say that you're a victim of domestic violence, being a victim means that you did not cause it, like you just said.
That's right.
But if somebody walked in the middle of the street and got hit by a car, they're a victim, right?
Sure.
We need to let domestic violence victims know that they are a victim and they didn't cause it. And that's the problem with society. That's the problem with media and thinking that needs to change. It doesn't matter that she did things during her abuse, like whether she got mouthy or she might have hit back to protect herself or any number of things. She was a placeholder. It could have been her or any other woman, and he needed to have that power over whoever stood there as a placeholder.
Right.
So really, she is a victim. She just happened to be the person, because guaranteed he's going to go do that to someone else unless he makes major changes.
Well, you're absolutely right. And not just to a woman, but to the children, to the pets, you fill in the blank, because he will find people that he is able to control and that he's able to at first charm and then lure them in to supply their addiction of control and ultimately violence over people. And it is tragic. So we want to really bring awareness today. Today is the day that I've chosen, and then next Monday as well, to bring awareness on the show. This is October, the national time to bring domestic violence awareness. And so call the number 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-SAFE. Renee, closing comments?
I'm sorry, it broke up.
Do you have a closing comment for me and for our listeners?
This is not the end of the story. It will get better.
Yeah.
Just do the right thing and don't go back.
That's right.
Because he's not going to change.
That's right.
And if he does, your friends will tell you, and it'll be obvious to everybody. Don't go back.
That's right. Okay, my guest, 10 seconds. You have a closing comment?
All right. I just wanted to reiterate some of the resources that we mentioned at the beginning of the show. StrongerCo.org, BTR.org, and CalledToPeace.org are places you can go to seek help and safety.
Get help today. This is not the end of the story. Thank you to my guest. Thank you, Renee. Your stories are incredible, and they're still being written for generations to come. And God has a plan, and he is good all the time, no matter what. And we just got to keep on walking, keep on trusting, and we want to look out for others as well. So God bless you today. Thank you for joining me on The Her Show. I am Trina. Hugs and high fives.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Greg Clugston in Washington. 17 people connected with a U.S.-based missionary group remain kidnapped after their abduction in Haiti on Saturday.
The missionaries, 16 Americans and 1 Canadian, are with the Ohio-based Christian Aid Ministries and are in Haiti building an orphanage. The U.S. State Department says it's working with Haitian officials, and the welfare and safety of U.S. citizens abroad is one of the highest priorities.
That's correspondent Julie Walker. Farmers and suppliers are worried about the impact of the John Deere strike. More than 10,000 Deere employees went on strike last week at 14 Deere factories in Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Colorado, and Georgia. Classes at Grambling State University are canceled today and tomorrow after yesterday's second deadly shooting at the Louisiana school within 4 days. The university says one person was fatally shot, 7 others wounded on campus